Illinois state lawmakers are moving closer to the pressure point of this year's legislative session, scheduled to end May 31st, and they need to finalize a budget by then. Governor J.B. Pritzker submitted his $56 billion spending plan about 2 months ago. It will be the largest budget in state history. The biggest challenge for lawmakers, though, to meet the governor's goal will be to overcome a projected deficit of more than $2 billion. A big factor is the estimated loss of $1.7 billion in federal funding for the next fiscal year. That starts July 1st. Democrats in the majority are considering new taxes to make up for the shortfall and meet their spending targets. One idea would impose a 3% tax surcharge on earnings that exceed $1 million. There's also a billionaire wealth tax proposed on people with net assets of at least $1 billion. Both of these would require constitutional amendments. The governor also proposes taxes on social media platforms and new taxes on casinos. Finalizing the budget is always the biggest challenge during the last few weeks of the legislative session. Those different tax proposals for debate to meet the marginal spending increase proposed need to be settled. We'll talk about that with Illinois House Minority Leader Tony McCombie and State Senator Mike Halpin. Always nice to see you both. Let's start with some of those tax ideas like the social media platform fee and raising the taxes for table games and electronic games at casinos. Those two proposals combined projected to add $320 million in revenue. How confident are you those will be adopted? What concerns do you have that maybe these social media platforms or casinos might scale back their operations in Illinois? Senator Halpin?
I think it remains to be seen whether they'll be included in the budget. I know the governor has proposed those, but the legislature is doing its work. I think our social media companies are clearly using us as the product, and particularly with young kids, there are certain social issues that are coming up with the use of this technology. I do think it makes some sense for them to have a stake and be able to help the state with those, help the state to address those problems that social media creates. But it remains to be seen what exactly that looks like. I think that's something that we're going to be considering over the next 6 weeks, and we'll see where it goes.
Representative McCombie, what's your take on that issue?
Yeah, the budget, introduced is certainly the start of a framework. I think more concerning, a total of $728 million of new revenues, which is tax increases or fees. Certainly, I don't believe is the way that we need to or can continue to budget. We need to be looking at, passing better policies that are going to, grow our economy. And unfortunately, we haven't seen this. So I think obviously the social media tax, that's an idea came from the mayor of Chicago, and they're certainly having some problems getting that started there. I think there's some constitutional questions. That'd be another question for the senator, since he's the attorney in the room here. But there certainly would be some concerns there just on the constitutionality of it.
What about the casino issue? Worried about the taxation on them, either of you?
For me, the casino issue, it's just here again under the dome, a deal that was made several years ago. And it's just another thing that they're taking away of a deal that was already made. That's also concerning. As we go forward, organizations and folks get together and they build something that looks good, and then it just gets taken away, several years later. Oftentimes when there's new folks here under the dome. So that's the part that's more concerning to me is you give and take away.
Senator Halpin, do you want to respond to that or want to move on?
Yeah, well, for me, I'll still wait to hear from our local casino to see how it directly impacts them. But between the social media companies, these big tech companies, and the casinos, they're bringing in billions upon billions of profit into their own pocketbooks, and they create issues that the state, has to address. And so I think it makes sense that those corporations are paying their fair share as well. But we do want to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't negatively impact the local community. And so that's what we'll have to continue to look at over the next couple of weeks.
Well, let's talk local community. Local governments might not be happy with the governor's idea to reduce their share of individual income tax revenue from 6.47% to 6.23%. That wouldn't be great for the smaller communities you both represent. We understand these aren't the best financial circumstances in Illinois. Do you see this as the right move to make? Representative McCombie?
No, especially coming from local government. There again, an agreement is made in how the municipalities and villages get their funding through the income tax. And yet again, we're shortchanging our communities, which in turn just means they raise the property taxes. It was just a few weeks ago, the governor blamed the local officials, whether it was a school board or local municipalities, on the high property taxes. Well, when we continue to not meet our obligations as a state, they're put in a bad position that they have to raise property taxes. So I'm very concerned. Another thing, just because they're getting more revenues through gaming or other sin taxes in our municipalities doesn't mean that they get to just cut the LGDF. It's not appropriate, and we can all remember that the sleight of hand with education and the lottery.
Do you see this as the right move to make, Senator Halpin?
Well, I think this is actually one area where the leader and I may agree. I want to make sure we're keeping revenue going to the cities. And to be fair, this is not under the governor's proposal anyway. Although it's a change to the percentage, it's actually level funding from last year. So I just want to be clear about that. That doesn't make it a good proposal. And so I'll be asking to make sure that we keep our cities in as good financial shape as possible to avoid the exact scenario that Leader McCombie mentioned about them raising property taxes. We've seen it on the education side where we failed to invest in our local school districts, and it resulted in school districts raising property taxes year over year over year. We've seen a slowdown in that now thanks to the evidence-based formula for K through 12 education. We don't want to continue that negative spiral when it comes to our municipalities.
All right, let's get ready to talk some football. There are a lot of Chicago Bears fans here in western Illinois and eastern Iowa. Indiana state lawmakers, as you know, trying to get the team to move across the border. The team has property in Arlington Heights it wants to use to build a new stadium, but the Bears ownership wants tax breaks. Call me old-fashioned. I think more should be done to keep the Bears in Chicago physically. All right, what's going to happen? Is this going to be the state legislature where actually we lost you, Senator Halpin? There you go. Is this actually going to be the state legislature that allows the Bears to move to Indiana?
No. So, I would love for the Bears to stay in Chicago or in the state of Illinois. And when I go out in the community, I specifically ask this question because it's the hot topic of the day. And a lot of folks will tell me, yes, we got to keep the Bears here. But then I ask the follow-up question: how much of your tax money that you pay to us to the state do you want us to put towards keeping the Bears here? And the answer is usually little to none. We are prepared to do the same type of infrastructure improvements that we would do for any type of economic development that we're bringing to the state. We don't want to pay for a stadium. We don't want to give a discount, or at least the folks I talked to, we don't want to give a discount on property taxes or security or certainty in property taxes for the Chicago Bears when we can't provide certainty for our local residents on their property taxes. It's just not fair. So like I said, I'm willing to do infrastructure improvements and try to work with the team to make it happen. But it's not something I think the district wants us to spend money on.
Representative McCombie, how about those Bears?
Yeah, how about them? And here again, look at us. The senator and I also agree as well on that. I think this is being sold as a Bears bill, but it really is a bill that's going to be drafted to bring economic development to our state, which we desperately need. So I think I think the Bears certainly prompts conversation, and that's how it all started. But they're looking at the mega project bill. I think in the original format that was not of interest for most people to consider, but I understand here in the House, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are certainly working on that, have asked our concerns on the language, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of framework that isn't just going to benefit the Bears staying in Illinois, but is actually going to attract and build business here in Illinois, which we all need desperately. But it cannot be at the cost of taxpayers.
All right, Illinois State Representative Tony McCombie and State Senator Mike Halpin, good luck with the rest of the session. That brings us to our question of the week. How far should the Illinois government go to keep the Chicago Bears from moving out of state? You can send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page or my page.